Hello everyone, welcome back to a trip of calm strength and power. The type of you understand what I mean when I say strength that leaves a lasting impression without screaming. About the sort of silent, unflinching determination that speaks loudly without speaking. You've put your all into it, haven't you? You've gone above and beyond, pushed aside your personal goals and ambitions in order to make they recognize your value, and you've done everything you can to support them in the hopes that they'll eventually see how, since they are so important to you, you've gone above and are always available to drop. Everything might change suddenly, and you've always been the person who is. You've poured out, and they're never saying no or asking for anything in return. Benevolence like a never-ending stream, expecting that one day they'd thought they would give a damn. But what did you receive in return? They treated you like a convenience, a footnote, and an afterthought. They gave you their whole attention, offered all good deeds and threw them away without a second look. They treated your dedication and allegiance like duties rather than as treasures you attempted to earn, and they walked all over you. Everything to close that gap, including discussing and rationalizing with them, possibly even pleading for a sliver of recognition, but every time you tried, you felt more worthless, and perhaps they couldn't see you because they were too blind, too reckless, or too at ease. Continued to give, but it simply appeared to make you more and more fade, as though they lost interest in your presence, showed little concern for your feelings, and the more difficult you appeared to matter less, the less you tried. And eventually you understood that nothing was going to alter. You only had the strongest card in your possession as a choice. Silence, so you decided to disappear in order to let the noise to subside and to cease filling. Without you, their world wouldn't have any more late-night texts, calls, or tiny reminders that you waited there in the hopes that you disappeared, leaving only stillness in its wake. And that silence is even more deafening, stronger than any words you could have said, and they are now struggling to cope with a world without you where the continual, since the warmth they formerly took for granted is vanished, they may attempt to appear normal, pretending nothing has changed while putting on that courageous, unconcerned front in public. However, the silence within them is ripping them apart with every empty moment. When your name doesn't appear in the notification, it reminds them of what they threw away behind closed doors. They may even feel compelled to do so because they are troubled by your departure and the gap you left behind. Attempt to shout out, to cry, but their pride prevents them from doing so, keeping them silent. They regretfully relive those moments, taking you for granted and viewing each recollection in a fresh way. Light now that it's too late. Even if they may be grinning in front, behind closed doors, it's only gloom and the heartbreaking knowledge of what they've lost. This quiet is yours, your power, your way of taking back control. So please take a moment to confirm with me that silence is my superpower. Firmly state that being silent isn't a sign of weakness. Rather, it's your strength is the loudest message you can convey, and I promise you they will sense it. Because, in the words of the renowned philosopher Epicurus, first ask yourself what it isn't about them, what you would be, and then do what you must do right now. It's about taking charge of your own destiny, so go ahead and claim it. My superpower is silence, so remain with me here as we're just getting started. Stay tuned, and I'll demonstrate to you the transformative power of quiet. The tables and make them face the void they experience without you. We'll delve further into this silent journey and how it changes the entire dynamic, makes them realize the gap they were unaware you had filled, and makes them question what they've let to fingers. Let's discuss something before delving too further into their tale. I know you love them, and probably still do, so that may be weighing on you right now. In a way, even with all the pain and the way they treated you like a habit they could get rid of, it's difficult to let go of love, and as a result, There's definitely a piece of you pondering what would happen if they simply move on and don't value my quiet. You're nodding along, aren't you? The thought of them ignoring you and forgetting you makes you feel like it's ripping you apart. Separated, but let me tell you that they are at least not leaving. Not emotionally. You can witness them putting on a show while wearing that mask, like they act as though they're okay without you and your quiet doesn't bother them. Yet there is a storm building behind that mask, and they are feeling the lack of you more than they will ever acknowledge, even if they act indifferent. Silence has set in, deeper than what could have been spoken with words, and let's face it, if they are unable to recognize your value in the quiet, do you really desire someone who didn't value you in the first place? Don't feel that loss. Requires continual reassurance that you are valuable to someone who only sees what they have just before they lose it. And this quiet isn't merely a break. It's, if they're too blind to recognize your worth, it's a test, a moment of truth for you both. Remain true to the fact that clarity is still valuable today. It's strong, so you keep your composure and allow them to experience. Believe me, people are already suffering the effects of this absence. If not, that's your response. But if they do, they will realize how much you intended. And if you haven't already, press the like button because this journey is important. It's about taking ownership of it, not just being silent. Energize yourself. Get ready to go further, and let's go because this is the understanding that you're really gone. And here we are will be the part they feel the most. When they first come to that awareness, this is when they start to feel the effects of your absence and realize that you're no longer there. Thus, you're out of reach. Perhaps they're maintaining appearances by pretending as though nothing's altered, but they sense in their hearts that the comforting familiarity is vanishing. Unreachable today, this is where the majority of us would err and feel that pang of pity. That uncertainty is beginning to seep in. We'd suppose perhaps I should check in just to. Once they are aware of my presence, we would reach out, breaking the quiet and reversing the force of our absence. But let's not mince words. That is a mistake that we cannot afford, allowing them to sit with their own ideas, errors, and emptiness. Every time you break the stillness, you're giving them back something that isn't about keeping them safe in your cozy presence. You put a lot of effort into claiming the power, so now is not the time to check in and let providing them the opportunity to genuinely sense your presence once more, comprehend what it was like for them to feel the entire burden of it melting away. And another mistake that some of us make is believing that our duty is to sit about wondering if they've seen while we wait and watch our phones. But that's not what redirecting all of your energy is. What silence is all about. Infusing them back into yourself. This is about going forward, not about pausing your existence. Empowering oneself and being more resilient. Consider it a metamorphosis and chance to develop into the type of person who doesn't wait around, but if they love you and actively construct their own future, this absence will shake them. And they'll realize your value in a manner they didn't previously. Silence is similar to a seed that is sown in the calm and will either grow, or whether they care or not, they will experience the draw, the pain, and the yearning to return to you. And if not, let this stillness tell you the truth right now. Than later, as the last thing you want is to spend your life with someone who doesn't respect you consistently. Nevertheless, as Seneca once stated, get away from those if you want a true buddy. Who wouldn't be saddened by your departure? This is the power of silence. It shows who really appreciates you, and those who don't are either lamenting your absence or they going on, and in any case, you're determining who is worthy of your attention. Love, picture yourself standing tall, looking straight forward, and not looking back. You're building a life based on growth and strength rather than the attention or approval from another individual, and as you proceed, the appropriate individuals. People who value you will notice, and those who are concerned will try to catch you up, and if they don't, you'll realize that leaving was the wisest move you may have made. Therefore, here is a statement for this phase of my trip. I'm over there, and my power is stillness. Write it down and say it out, down if necessary, and keep in mind that we're only getting started. Determine whether they will ever understand how much they've lost you, but we don't care about that. This quiet is only the beginning of finding the truth, and eventually the solutions will become clear. Please wait, since you're going to see the actual power of silence, and every step you take will lead to clarity. If we'll get to that, but don't be misled by their seeming indifference. That's just a front. Part next. Stay with me, as this voyage has a lot more to offer. Okay, let's continue. You made your decision in silence, and now things are starting to ripple, but this is where This is the point where a lot of us are thrown off guard by the mask of indifference. Of course, because it's when they pretend that nothing has changed and that everything is fine, as if your absence is simply on a typical day. You might come across them grinning on social media posts. Friends may even appear calm and talk as though they're doing better than ever, unconcerned, as though your quiet is only background noise. But that disguise of, you see, indifference is a cover or a shield they're using to give you the impression that they don't care. People experience a change in control when they recognize that they are no longer the center of their universe. Defenses they're using in an attempt to give the impression that your absence is pointless. For them, it's similar to playing poker, with their cards close at hand, keeping a low profile in the hopes that you'll be the first to reach out. They wish to give the impression that they are unaffected, yet their show of indifference is really a mask concealing the truth of their true feelings, which is frequently when people fall into the trap, since they seem so unaffected. Makes us doubt everything, leading us to consider whether we should check in. Was incorrect. Perhaps they're okay without me, but the reality is that they don't care. Is a component of the game. It's the first thing people do when they sense that they're losing control. Acting as though they don't require your help, they are attempting to persuade you that you are the wiser one. Epicurus famously remarked that situations don't define a man, they only make him your. Instead of addressing it, your silence is exposing something in them that they don't want to face. They put on this facade of indifference in the hopes that you would break through it and reach out to restore their sense of consider security and control as a barrier they are erecting to prevent their own sentiments behind it, hoping and praying that you'll be the first to break. You must maintain your position at this point, since the instant you break, you'll be reaching out to discover if it's like giving them the reins once more and relinquishing control when you give them exactly what they wanted. Your current quiet is having an effect on them, even if they don't want to. It only works if you allow it to do its job. If you give in, you'll get it back. To the beginning, and they are aware of your apathy. It's just they are hiding behind a thin wall in the hopes that you won't see the cracks that are developing. They may not even be aware of it, but your absence is gradually pressing down on them behind that mask. But they're starting to sense the void you left behind. Gradually, and they're beginning to understand that addressing that gap isn't as easy as feigning indifference while they're in a quiet panic, expecting you won't acknowledge their rising discomfort or vulnerability. It's a silent battle. However, the pressure increases every day you remain silent, and this is when the true test for you starts. It is easy to believe that silence is about waiting, but that is only half of it. The force of silence is at its strongest right now, when, rather of passively waiting, you're actively developing and reshaping your life. When will they ultimately recognize that they've lost focus? Your phone on yourself every day you invest in your personal development, and life is if they love you, they will sense your strength every day. This quiet will evoke the emotions and power you're displaying by remaining silent and developing rather than. They won't be able to resist the feeling of waiting, even if the mask of indifference will begin to seem heavy if you don't realize it immediately. Unpleasant, such as a garment that no longer fits, and they will find it increasingly difficult to pretend. They'll start to feel drawn to you and want to get in touch because your silence has become an unavoidable force. But what if they don't give a damn? What if the mask is all that they possess and nothing lies behind it? Then this quiet is exposing the truth. If they can go on without you being affected, then let it be obvious. Clarity now has greater value than any phony comfort, since the last thing you must give all of your love and energy to someone who is incapable of appreciating you, unless, according to Marcus Aurelius, you're directly in front of them. Annoy individuals, it's their opinions about them. If they're not affected by your absence, let that assessment to remain in place and use it as a guide to steer clear of someone who doesn't value you. Thus, this is a reminder to keep your emphasis on. You should allow their facade of disinterest to remain intact. Don't let it hold you back. This is your chance to develop and create a life that doesn't depend on other people's attention. If they miss you, they'll return when the moment is right. Their own conditions. And if they don't, they've made room in your life for someone who will genuinely appreciate you. Tell yourself, I am not deterred by their lack of interest. Enhancing my own value and strength, saying it aloud, writing it down, and making it yours. Remember that you're getting stronger every time doubt creeps in, becoming more resilient each day, and let's continue to communicate along this path because this veneer of indifference won't last, because the layers only get deeper from here. The truth will eventually come to light in ways that they cannot ignore. There is yet much to discover, and we're only beginning. Now we go into a more difficult phase, the weight of remorse. Initially they attempted to dismiss it and conceal their emotions, but now they are being assaulted by silence like a wave from which they are unable to break free. Begin to perceive the emptiness of the gap you leave behind, and regret creeps in like a shadow they can't get rid of. It's not about acting indifferent anymore. It's about coming to the realization that they might have committed a mistake they can't reverse. Imagine them reliving every moment and every chance they had to show gratitude. It's like standing on a precipice and staring at you every time they shove you away. Looking back at all they took for granted, those decisions now haunt them, and they come to the depressing realization that every reckless deed as the philosopher, they are losing more money than they expected because you were disrespected. As Seneca said, every new beginning comes from the end of another beginning. They're starting to realize that their time with you is coming to an end. They're feeling the pain of losing something genuine, but they won't speak it aloud or confess it to anyone. Regret creeps in subtly, like a shadow, without making an announcement, following them about at all times, and the longer you remain silent, the more resilient you will be. It becomes more apparent that this isn't about missing you, but rather about realizing that they had. Nowadays, the majority of people let something priceless and irreplaceable pass past their fingertips. Try to ignore the sorrow when they get to this point. They'll continue there on the outside. They appear unconcerned, but on the inside, they're experiencing the consequences of their behavior and considering if they wanted to keep you around them, they should have treated you better. They are struggling with their pride, remorse, and realization as the recollection stings, knowing they've lost control and that the sorrow of this loss is greater than they anticipated is where you might feel sorry for them and want to help them by reaching out to let them know you understand. Pain, but keep in mind that this is their journey, not yours, and they must experience this. Grieve this void, in order to completely comprehend what they have lost by stepping in. Now, even well-meaning people would merely lessen the burden of what there is a place for feeling sorrow, and occasionally people must sit with it to feel the weight of it all, to realize how much they've lost. Therefore, take a deep breath and repeat to yourself, "I am worth more than their remorse that I chose myself over." Say it aloud and let it sink in. You're not here to judge someone's fleeting emotions. Protect them from the repercussions of their behavior. Your power is yours to bear their regret. We're just halfway there, so please stick with me on this journey. My regret is strong, but it's just the start of what they'll experience on their journey. Stop here, and as their remorse grows, they are compelled to face even more realities that they can no longer ignore. Tight, since the adventure is far from over and there is still a lot more to do. And if you're still here, please take a time to let me know whether these words have struck a chord with your personal experience. Have you made the leap into quiet at this point in your journey, or are you're still struggling with doubts? Leave a remark and keep going. Since this trip is as much about developing yourself as it is about them realizing you're persevering what they've lost. But don't worry, we're not finished yet. The next stage is, there's more to say about confronting the masks, the stand-ins, and what occurs when they attempt to fill the gap you left. Uncover, so let's continue. Okay, let's continue delving further into this path. So they are now experiencing the burden of remorse, but rather than confronting, they might attempt a shortcut rather than actually going through the agony. And what they do is begin searching for a fresh candidate in the hopes of filling This stage can be challenging if you have to replace that presence with a fast repair. For you to observe, particularly if they're showing it off and giving the impression that they've moved on with ease, as though you were simply another chapter for them to read. But don't be fooled. This isn't about moving on. Rather, it's about escaping. Think of it as covering a serious wound with a bandage. They are seeking a diversion rather than healing. Therefore, they are covering it up in the hopes that a new relationship would dull the pain. For anything that causes people to forget, although it's just a distraction, they know deep down that the presence of another person cannot make up for the one they lost with you. They're hiding behind this individual in order to avoid dealing with their own emotions, hoping that the emptiness you left won't return if they continue to be active. Catch up with them. Their attempt to take your place is more of a coping strategy than a genuine relationship. Attempting to persuade themselves, and perhaps even you, that they're okay, and although I'm glad they've moved on, a genuine connection cannot be replaced like an accessory. When we lose something, it's not about finding someone new to take its place. Important, our initial inclination is frequently to look for an alternative that fills the void without requiring us to evolve. But it's similar to attempting to fit a piece of a puzzle that doesn't belong. It may appear fine from a distance. However, up close, they sense the emptiness it conceals, so they might venture out more. Pretend to be living their best lives by posting on social media and flaunting their new relationships, yet remind yourself that this is about their incapacity to sit with their own. They're trying to tell themselves that they've moved on from you by disguising their discomfort behind this display, but it's merely that a show and the more profound reality cannot take the place of something genuine, something fleeting, putting on a facade to protect themselves from the pain of regret, yet on the inside, there. When you observe this, you could begin to struggle with the emptiness that fleeting distractions and fresh faces cannot fill. When you doubt your own value, you may wonder if you ever meant anything and whether it's really that simple for someone to take your position. But keep in mind that this is a reflection of their fear, not of you. They're terrified of the silence and the emptiness you leave behind. So rather than, when faced with it, They turn to a new person in the hopes that they can take up a space that was previously only you. If you require an affirmation, hold on to this one. I am irreplaceable, and my worth cannot be. Say it firmly whenever doubt tries to enter, whether it is repeated or replaced. Finding the truth is the goal of the voyage, and their current behavior shows that they are not prepared to face. Some people would rather use a band-aid solution to mask their suffering than face the true loss they'll be concealing. Behind a new person in the hope that the emptiness will go away. But it never does, and if you'll know deep down if they don't realize this on their own. You stay on because they were never able to properly value you in the first place. You remind yourself that their behavior doesn't define you in response to that affirmation. Worth, if they're turning to someone new as a coping mechanism or journey, cause their diversion as the reality of a genuine connection cannot be replaced, and each time they attempt to fill the void by looking to someone else, they are reminded of what they lost it, and no matter how hard they try to ignore it, it's like trying to bandage a wound without allowing it to heal. According to philosopher Alan de Bon, they will be followed by the pain of that emptiness. In other words, people only become genuinely fascinating when they begin to raise the standards of their cages. But rather than escaping the prison of their own denial, they're avoiding the discomfort by remaining inside in the hopes that a new face would divert their attention from the reality. Refusing to recognize the worth of what they have lost, and that is the path they must follow, not yours. And when we enter a new stage, when they start to unravel, reality sets in, and everything starts to go apart for them. Initially believed they could continue as if nothing had changed. Yet without the consistency you provide and the ongoing assurance of you understand that you weren't just someone who appeared. You were their pillar and their constant, and their world begins to crumble. The basis that they unwittingly relied upon, and now that it's gone, it appears as though they are attempting to hold water in their hands as the fractures start to appear. Yet no matter how firmly they could feel as though they are holding something as they squeeze it till it slips away. Collectively, but underneath the surface, everything is unraveling, and the diversions they used to fill the gap, but now they feel meaningless and empty. They're coming to the realization that the world they made without you isn't as stable as they once believed in the silence, at instances when their friendships begin to feel even more empty, may begin to feel empty, or their everyday activities become meaningless. There is a restlessness and a lack of concentration, since they lack the sense of security you provided them by grounding them, even if they never valued it, and now they're lost and attempting to locate. They begin to experience the full impact of their decisions when they lose their footing without that anchor. Having to face the mess they made, their world is starting to fall apart, piece by piece, and they begin to feel as though there isn't a distraction powerful enough to keep the emptiness at bay. If anything is absent and it was you, it's the silence. Understanding that the stability they had previously taken for granted has vanished, and they must now confront the repercussions. It's simple to sympathize at this point and feel compelled to do action. Return and assist in providing that support once more, but keep in mind that this is their journey. They must go through this process of coming to this knowledge without you intervening. This is the only way to save them and make sure they fully see the significance of the clarity they're beginning to regain would be destroyed if they stepped in right now. Remind yourself that I am the stability they lost, but I am also my own strongest. This is necessary if you feel compelled to assist them in reducing their suffering. Confront this voyage by themselves in order to comprehend the consequences of their choices without the safety net you previously offered. Now is the moment for you to mature and stand tall. Grown more resilient than before, we're approaching the core of this adventure, and the reality will soon become much more apparent, and there will be more to come as they hold on, because this isn't it. They're still feeling the effects of your absence while their world keeps collapsing. Nevertheless, the true comprehension of the complete consequences of what they lost is still. They will soon be unable to ignore it as we wait for them. So remain tuned, because while they battle in silence, the last facts will start to surface, and their true emotions will surface. To the surface in ways they can't conceal, so let's go ahead and bring. As the voyage comes to an end, the stillness becomes so powerful that they are unable to ignore the emptiness that keeps rising awareness that they've attempted to hide in order to escape it, to divert their attention. But these protections are gradually eroding, and there they are left in stillness, a silence that seems empty and lifeless. They can't fathom living like this, all by themselves, with only the sound of your absence is beginning to deafen the connections they attempted to make, produce the individuals they employed as stand-ins, the performances they put on to look good, and nothing can touch the emptiness they experience, the knowledge that there is no way to avoid the pain, and they allowed something valuable and irreplaceable to elude them. This emptiness is a silent, unrelenting pain rather than a loud, dramatic kind. Pain that only gets worse with time. It serves as a constant reminder of what at first, they believed they could ignore it, and it would go away. But they're battling in a place where your absence takes them closer to a reality they can't ignore every day. Presence was that wherever they go, they're greeted with a feeling of, imagine them lying awake at night, the emptiness serving as a reminder of what they tossed away. Staring at the ceiling without any reassuring messages on their phone, reminder of your concern. These silent pauses in these quiet moments where they experience it best when they are alone themselves and free from outside distractions. When the pain of your absence intensifies, they may attempt to hide it, keep occupied, but they are always followed around by this stillness. This is a reminder of what they let slip through their fingers, and you could be tempted to inquire if they can all relax a little to lessen their suffering, but keep in mind that this quiet is their journey, not yours, requires them to completely experience this emptiness in order to comprehend the weight of their decisions, and if you don't intervene to save them from this silence, it will just take away the lesson they must learn. If they genuinely care for you and esteem you, they will be deeply affected by this quiet, which will evoke emotions they have been trying to suppress. They can no longer deny that if there was true love, this emptiness would drive. When they confront it, they will begin to understand that they have lost something that no one else can provide. But if they don't care, if they are able to endure this stillness without being impacted, which demonstrates that clarity and knowledge are gifts, that they never made as much of an investment as you did, and that having that freedom will enable you to proceed with complete assurance. Keep in mind that my quiet demonstrates my strength and worth. Every time you are tempted to reach out and fill the gap in their lives, you choose to remain silent. It's not a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a strong decision to respect yourself enough to take a back seat and let others face the truth of what they produced, and the breaking is almost here. Moment following all of the disguises, diversions, and attempts to fill the gap, they've reached a point at which they can no longer deny the reality. They must make a decision and face what they've failed to accept: accountability, mature, or remain in a state of denial. For some, regret weighs them down forever, and this is the point at which the agony becomes so great that they spiral, burdened with regret at the loss of something they now understand cannot be replaced. They begin to recognize that the regret, the emptiness, the pain isn't going away. It's a feeling that will always be there, and continuous reminder of what they abandoned in every effort to move on from it only returns them to the same realization that they have lost something tangible. They will never come across others again, but they can decide to take a different route. Consider your absence to be a wake-up call and a flash of insight, with the understanding that perhaps they have an opportunity to face what they lost, to comprehend their mistakes in order to improve themselves. It's similar to coming to a fork in the road. They might choose to let their regrets rule them, or see it as a chance for personal development, which is where Marcus Aurelius's remarks come in. It is accurate to say that the obstacle to progress is what prevents action, becomes the manner in which your silence served as their roadblock and wake-up call, compelling them to decide whether to change or stay the same if they overcome. It's because they've given themselves permission to grow from their errors. If they fail, it's because they don't want to confront the reality of their own behavior. And here is where the beauty of this last phase lies. You've done your part by taking a step back and allowing them to confront their choices. Therefore, you're no longer bound by them. Their journey, their reality, and their development, or lack thereof, are no longer yours. Accountability. You've allowed them the room to face themselves in order to develop or to remain the same, but you've developed, recovered your strength, and realized your value. For this last affirmation, take a deep breath and declare, I am independent. Now that I'm free, you're starting a new chapter in which your worth isn't reliant on another person's acknowledgement, where your strength isn't determined on the acceptance you've received this path with clarity, self-assurance, and a renewed sense of value. Regardless of whether they recognize what they've lost, you've gained something far more significant, like strength, self-respect, and independence, and the ability to design a life that represents your own value as you go forward. Although your road wasn't simple, you've come a long way and are now stronger. As we come to an end, take a minute to reflect on your growth and prepare for a future that celebrates it. To allow yourself to be silent about this, your strength, and what your path has taught you. You've established boundaries that represent your value and competence, and you're genuinely capable of. You've acquired something priceless, regardless of whether they realize what they've lost. I appreciate you joining me on. If this message struck a chord with you on this journey, please remember to share it with. Share the strength of resilience and self-worth. And before you leave, let us know. Comment below. Are you prepared to welcome a new phase of your independence, or are you open to forming new relationships that genuinely represent your worth? Please let us know, and keep in mind that you've gone a long way, and this is just the start of the freedom and fulfillment you deserve, prepared for you to take possession of it.